Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. Welcome to this event that we are proudly organizing with the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. We are very happy to have you all here, and we hope you enjoy this afternoon of very interesting sessions that we have prepared. Without making you wait any longer, I would like to introduce you to Sigfrido Herraiz, Dean of the College of Architects. He wants to say a few words.
Muy breve, buenas tardes y bienvenidos. Bienvenidos, ahora se lo decía Marc, a vuestra casa. Es la casa de los arquitectos, aunque yo tengo que abrir y cerrar todos los días. Enrique y Íñigo, bueno, aparte de amigos, son para mí y sobre todo admirados. Ese hecho que no ocurre en todas las profesiones, lo estábamos comentando ahora, pero que en nuestra profesión de arquitectos sí se da. Es decir, cuando vemos a alguien que lo hace mejor que tú, lo admiramos, incluso algunos intentan hasta copiarlo, ¿no? Y a mí me parece que el mérito que tienen Enrique e Íñigo tiene que ver con esto que veo esta tarde aquí. Es decir, por qué se produce este llenazo a la hora de comer, para escuchar a una personalidad que nos va a iluminar esta tarde sobre ese titular, New o Renew. ¿Qué mérito tiene que estos dos compañeros hayan pensado en organizar, traer, pagar todo lo que conlleva la organización de este acto? Y a mí eso me parece que es admirable, que dice mucho de qué personas son Enrique y Íñigo y por qué hoy estamos aquí o están tantos compañeros. El Colegio de Arquitectos está abierto a muchísimas eventos, diaria y continuamente. Tenemos ahora mismo, les estaba contando, 3. Uno ahí a 20 metros, sobre una presentación de una marca y un poquito más abajo ahora tengo que bajar a la Junta de Representantes, a los 75 que nos representan y que una vez cada 2 meses nos reunimos a debatir sobre cómo va nuestro colegio. Pero es muy importante que nos abramos al futuro de las ciudades y de la arquitectura. Es decir, creo que ese compromiso del Colegio de Arquitectos con nuestros compañeros que hoy nos traen todo organizado, pero como le decía alguien ahora, esto lo tendría que haber organizado el propio Colegio de Arquitectos, no por iniciativa de unos compañeros que admirablemente lo han hecho, sino porque efectivamente es necesario debatir sobre el futuro de las ciudades. El futuro de las ciudades tiene que ver con esa pregunta. Ahora mismo en el grupo que hemos constituido de asesoramiento en el Ayuntamiento de Madrid en materia de plan general, vamos a debatir, a discutir sobre todo sobre crecer, no crecer, cómo crecer. Es decir, ahí está la demanda insatisfecha, los números que son necesarios, los promotores que necesitan hacer negocio, todo lo que defiende el New está ahí, lo conocemos, pero también hay que pensar en dar mayor calidad de vida, más amabilidad en la ciudad existente y además consumir menos energía e intentar que medioambientalmente hablando esa mezcla de lo nuevo y lo antiguo se produzca con paz y con el trabajo de muchos compañeros arquitectos que trabajan en una y otra materia. Por eso nos decidimos a abrir una oficina de rehabilitación en la primera planta y asesorar y ayudar a nuestros compañeros en subvenciones, en ayudas, en lo que tiene que ver con el Renew. No me voy a alargar, creo que la alabanza que he hecho de Enrique y Íñigo, de Ortiz.León, es insuficiente para lo que se merecen. Me he estado estudiando un poquito más su obra, más en profundidad, y como me ha apabullado, me ha parecido, no sé cómo alguien puede trabajar tanto y de tan buena calidad, ¿no? Es decir, yo lo de tanto he visto muchos compañeros que gracias a Dios les va muy bien, pero lo de tener esa calidad en cada página que pasas de vuestras publicaciones es un grandísimo mérito. Os felicito por el itinerario que tenéis en vuestro estudio y también, como no, por lo que habéis hecho hoy por la profesión, traer aquí un foro de debate necesario, muy necesario, y que creo que va a dar su resultado. Enhorabuena, ánimo y adelante. Gracias.
Thank you, Sigfrido, and thank you for letting us have the event here. And now I'm going to introduce you to Íñigo Ortiz. He's the founding partner of Ortiz.León Architects, and he is the representative of Spain of the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to read these notes because my English is not so good as others. First of all, thank you very much for coming, all of you, and also for the Colegio Arquitectos for its hospitality. We are having this interesting day organized by the Spanish chapter of the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, with the presence of Anthony Wood as president of this global organization. I have been asked why we do this conference in English, and it's because the visibility of this session is going to be much greater than the 200 of us who are here today. It will be shared later on social media in order to distribute knowledge globally. So if you want to think global, English is a must. The first thing I want to do is to thank. Let me check. Okay. The first thing I want to do is to thank the companies that have helped us carry out this event. First, TK Elevators, that is always with us, Valladares, ENAR, Constructora San José, SCW Fachadas, Tevitec Cricursa, Inasus, Signify is the Siemens Lighting, Philips Lighting, pardon, Martifer, Schuco, Saint-Gobain, which, as you can see, reflects the interest in the future and in the great forum about new and renew in general, not only in high-rise buildings. My relationship with the Council goes back to 1988, when we began, Enrique and I, designing the Mafre Tower, opened in 1992. This is when I had the opportunity to write 2 papers on high-rise buildings in Spain that were published in 1994 by the Council 30 years ago. So I can tell you that the enormous activity and knowledge the Council has, and so it is worth to be in. This conference has 2 goals. On one hand, be aware of the importance of the future of cities and buildings, and identify the variables that will set the selection criteria. And on the other hand, to give greater visibility to the Council in Spain so that all of you can become members. And I encourage you to sign up for the upcoming conferences. This is the founder of the Council. The upcoming conference, the European one in Istanbul, April 18-19, Future Fit Cities, Safer, Adaptive Density, and in a changing area, and especially the global on the schedule for September 23rd to 27 in London and Paris, New and Renew, Addressing the Density Dilemma, where all aspects will be debated from urban planning to those which have technical issues. I have asked for a comment of how I see the future. There are 3 enormous challenges in the next 30 years. As you can see here, nowadays we are 8,200 million people in the world, more or less 4,200 live in cities, 4 million live in rural areas, And in the next 30 years, 2,200 million people live in standard housing that for sure need to be refurbished. Not only housing, but also all around them, like hospitals, offices, and so on. 2 million people substandard housing that live in cities, but we need to give them new affordable housing. And still, we will have 3,500 million people that living in rural areas that they will live in cities. So 2 million will be in cities. So we have the challenge of enormous challenge, not only for new planning and new city urban areas, but for renew. And this is one thing that we have to have in mind. So this forces us to dedicate much more time and talent to urban planning and to begin thinking on proposals for the use of rural land. We must identify people and organizations of each country where the master plans of the cities are generated and make them aware of the long-term importance of their decisions and help them improve their conceptual process from scratch. Before, for example, a church was built and its architecture was going to last for centuries. Now architecture has to, on one hand, minimize the non-renewable resources necessary to create it, and must be flexible and future-proof, so that over the time it can be adapted to uses and technology that society demands at all times. We have to overview their second and third life without demolishing or disassembling it. We also have to rethink the mind experience in order to improve satisfaction in human activities through the space and through the neuroarchitecture. We can help organizations to achieve their ESG goals through architecture using lean strategies, not only doing lighter buildings, but very low energy, carbon-free, and life cycle thinking. So, to finish, the future, it is creativity and technologies. Creativity is currently forgotten since we live in the world of references. But artificial intelligence technology, twin models, big data, has only just begun. Thus, this long journey, and we have to dedicate a lot of resources to them. We have to use these new tools not to blind our creativity, but to upgrade it. These two variables in the trinomial life science technology innovations forces us to begin the path of research, development, and innovation, its development and subsequent implementations in our cities. Building and spaces without forgetting all aspects related to the physical and mental comfort of people and the neurodiversity of human beings. So, at this moment, I'm leaving you with Anthony Wood. Anthony Wood linked to the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitats for many years, CO until last year. I think he is a great traveler with first-hand knowledge of the problems of high-rise buildings, cities, and their identifications. Thank you very much.
Hello. So my name is Anthony Wood. I am an architect. I'm a professor of architecture. I hail from Manchester in England originally, but I've lived in Chicago for 18 years. I've been at the helm of CTBUH. How many people in this room have heard before of CTBUH, Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat? Put your hands up proudly if you have. Before today, by the way. Okay, so less than half the room. So we have some work to do today. So I'm going to present to you about tall buildings, but more than tall buildings, okay? Because the council is about more than tall buildings. It's actually about the future of cities. So I'm going to put across some ideas. Some of those ideas might be controversial. Some of them you might not expect somebody in my position to say. But let's start with some data. So this is a graph that shows the number of buildings 200 meters or greater completed around the world every year from 1980. By the way, 200 meters, I am not saying that a tall building is 200 meters or greater. Yeah? The council defines all aspects of tall buildings. We also define, we say which is the world's tallest, or which is Madrid's tallest building, or which is Madrid's tallest residential building with an offset core, all variations. So our definition of a tall building is very simple. A tall building is a building that exhibits some element of tallness. Okay? What that means is it's height relative to context. Yeah? So it's up to you to decide what is a tall building. But it can be 10 or 12 stories in many suburban settings. But this is a study that looks at 200 meters. How many buildings greater than 200 meters in Spain? Does anybody know? 7. Is it 7 or 8? Okay, so 7 or 8 tall buildings in Spain throughout history greater than 200 meters. But look at this. In the 1980s, the entire world was building, on average, 6 buildings greater than 200 meters per year. And in the last decade, that has increased by a factor of 24. Actually, if you look here, last year, 2023, was the most successful year for skyscraper completion ever. Now, all we hear is doom and gloom in the building industry. China's slowing down, Germany's, all these recessions and stuff. But look, last year was the most successful year for skyscraper completion ever. Now, yes, part of it was the COVID downturn. Yeah? So projects slowed and stopped. But there are a lot of tall buildings happening around the world. Let me aggregate this for you. This is the total number of tall buildings that are in existence today, 200 meters or greater. So there's only 2 data facts I want you to remember from me today. Here's one of them. So if you've drunk too much wine or beer during the cocktail, wake up now for this data fact. You can say that 90% of all tall buildings that exist in the world today have been built since the year 2000. That's incredible. Was anyone in this room? No, I better not ask that. I was going to ask, was anyone born after the year 2000? Better not ask that, other than me. 90%. Actually, you know what we could say here? 90% of all tall buildings that exist in the world today have been built since 9/11. Do you remember 9/11 was going to be the death of tall buildings? And the exact opposite happened. Actually, I think 9/11 became a catalyst for tall buildings. And we could debate that for the rest of the afternoon. So tall buildings have happened in incredible numbers over the last 20 years or so. But here's the problem. And here's where we get controversial. I think that 95% of tall buildings that have been built are terrible pieces of design. They should never have been built. I think they're destroying cities. I'm serious with that. As an architect, okay, I should have said, as the president of the CTBUH, I think all the tall buildings are fantastic, yeah? As an architect and as a professor of architecture, I think 95% are terrible. And I'll tell you why. Because tall buildings tend to be designed one of 2 ways. And I start with this building. Now, I'm a professor at IIT. This is the home of Mies van der Rohe. So it's very controversial for me to put up a building by Mies van der Rohe in 1958 and criticize it. I'm not criticizing this building. This was 1958. But this project was so successful that it was hijacked and put into 10,000 places around the world. I mean, actually, look at most tall buildings around the world. They're exactly the same as this. 1958. They're just the rectilinear, commercial, air-conditioned box. I'm not even sure it's architecture, because it's an efficient floor plan. There's extruded through 20, 120 stories, maximum commercial return. The skin might have got a bit better, the performance might have got a bit better, but I don't think this is the way forward for our cities. So this is shortfall number 1, the commercial approach. Here's shortfall number 2. Tall building as icon. Tall building as gratuitous piece of sculpture. The more crazy the form, what are we doing? What are we doing? Because this becomes this. This is real, people. This is real, yeah? Didn't get built, fortunately, but, these icons are self-canceling out. It's not really a city, it's a zoo. It's a zoo of architectural icons. And here's what concerns me. When I was 21 years old, having never left my country, I bought a one-way ticket out to Hong Kong. I finished my first degree in architecture, and I bought a one-way ticket out to Hong Kong. Never been on a plane, never left my country. And over the next 10 years, I set foot on all 7 continents in about 60 countries. Yeah, and I've been to close to 100 countries. What motivates me to do that is the difference between places, not the similarities. The difference. And you go and visit these cities and these places around the world, and they have hundreds, if not thousands of years of different vernacular architecture. The Western Cathedral, the Chinese pagoda, the Islamic mosque, they're all different. Why? Because they were all a response to 4 or 5 things. They were a response to people, to culture, to materials, to climate, to these things. But with modern architecture, we don't feel we have to do that. So cities are becoming homogenized. Homogenized around the world. They're all looking the same. High-rise buildings are doing for cities what Starbucks and McDonald's are doing for the dining experience. Why? I believe there is a way forward to create Spanish tall buildings which are different to American tall buildings, which are different to Chinese tall buildings. How? We need to go back to the original influences on vernacular architecture, not designed to one international style. And I just find this image very, very inspiring. This is Shibam in Yemen 500 years ago. 500 years ago, this was tall, this was dense, but there's no 2 buildings that are the same here. You look, they're all different. But there's a commonality of approach. There's a commonality of approach that has required us to suspend ego with one particular building and buy into a collective vision of beauty. Think about the best cities. Think about Venice. Think about these cities, historical, that have something special. Okay. So, I've now made this statement, 95% of tall buildings are terrible. It would be very disappointing if I just left stage. So I'm now going to show you some of the 5%. Some of the buildings that I think are fantastic. By the way, 5% of thousands of buildings, yeah? So there's a lot of good buildings. But I'm going to do it in the context of what I call design principles, yeah? Because I'm a professor. So rather than just say, I think this is good, and this is good, and this is good, I'm going to tell you why I think they're good in the context of design principles. So 10 new paradigms for high-rise design. So number 1, tall buildings should relate to the specific characteristics of place. That's what I mean about vernacular, and tall buildings can do it. By specifics, I mean physically, environmentally, and culturally. So let's start with this project, which you may know. Richard Rogers, London. They called it, they still call it, the cheese grater. You all know what a cheese grater is? I don't know if you have those in Spain. They're shaped like this, and you grate your cheese on it, yeah? But it wasn't designed as a cheese grater. It was designed with respect to the viewing corridors. Yeah, you can see here. It leans in because of views of St. Paul. It opens up at the base because of views of a grade 1 listed church. So the shape is informed by physical things in the city around the base. It's not just a gratuitous piece of sculpture. An extreme form. Yeah, I'm showing this not necessarily because I think it's a good building. Actually, it's not even a building, but because it shows that its whole existence is with respect to a city that exists, the Dubai frame. It frames the city. It doesn't just plonk down anywhere in any shape in the city. So physically, but also environmentally. So a project in Korea which looks to maximize the sun, both block the sun by leaning the glass in to cut down incident sun, and then to use the spandrel panels for solar panels. Or through wind. We could talk all day about wind. 20 years ago, everyone thought that wind turbines on tall buildings was going to save us. Those are the only 3 buildings that tall buildings that exist around the world, significant ones with wind turbines. So sometimes we follow dead ends. But the point is that buildings should try to maximize their relationship with the environment. By the way, if you're going to do, this is a student project. I'm only going to show 2 or 3 student projects, all right? This is a project a student did. If you're serious about harnessing wind or harnessing energy, then you've got to do it. You've got to do it. Can't be Mickey Mouse, 3 little turbines. You've got to do it. So this was a project I did with students a long time ago, wind farm, where it's actually a significant wind farm. Here's another project I did with a student. This again is about environment. You get LEED points for recycling rainwater. Yeah, any BREEAM, LEED, neighbors, you get points for recycling rainwater. Yeah, but if you look at tall buildings, the recycling rainwater is maybe the roof and the roof of the podium or around the base. Well, think about a tall building, as it extrudes up, the roof is negligible. And rain doesn't fall like that at height. It's blown by the wind. So if you're serious about recycling rainwater, it's all about the facade. It's not about the roof. So this project looked to recycle the maximum amount of rainwater and bring it back in to the building for immediate use. That was just principle number 1, people. Number 2, tall buildings should vary with height. I am so passionate about this. You know how I said about the just extrusions of a plan? What's all that about? They should vary with height. I'm going to show you some projects that vary with height. You might not like them. New York, Toronto, Bangkok, my city, my new city, Chicago. We need to think about tall buildings in horizons. This is not a small building. The big difference between the big opportunity with a tall building over a small building, as it rises up in the city, it starts to have a relationship far and wide in the city that you don't get with a small building. So this can become a generator for form. Look at this project. This is Bjarke Ingels in Vancouver, or somewhere in Canada, Vancouver. At the base, there's an ugly 6-lane highway. At the base, not at level 20, not at level 62. It doesn't need to just be extruded because of something happening at the base. So it starts at the base, because of this big highway, but morphs into something else at the top. And so when I said you can fall asleep except for 2 data things, right? Here's the second data thing. This is the Burj Khalifa. It's the tallest building in the world. The external air temperature at the top of the Burj Khalifa on any given day might be 8 degrees cooler than the bottom. Yeah? So the air is cooler at the top of the building, external. The amount of moisture in the air is radically different at the top than at the bottom. The amount of particulate in the air, sand and stuff, is different. Here's what I'm saying. The climate is different at the top than at the bottom, and actually different halfway up. So this building cuts across 3 climate zones. Now, if we all agree that buildings should relate to climate zones, relate to their climate, then why is this building the same all the way up? Why is the skin the same? Why is the program the same? By the way, I'm not necessarily criticizing this building. I think they're fantastic buildings, but all tall buildings are the same the way up. But if the relationship to the city is changing and the relationship to climate is changing, then that should be reflected in the building. And that's why I think we should consider them in strata, not just extrusions. Now, this is controversial because I'm guessing that a big percentage of this audience are involved with facades. In fact, I know because I've met several of you already today, right? So just don't listen to the next thing I'm going to say. We've got to stop building tall buildings out of all glass. Out of all glass, especially in intense solar environments like the Middle Eastern desert. You know, we don't have to build them out of all glass. You know, glass is so important, and it's going to be a big part of every building moving forward in tall building, but it doesn't have to be all glass. If we moved away from all glass and brought opacity into the facade, then we also have a chance for greater expression, in my view. This was a project in the Middle Eastern desert that was built by Skidmore 30, 40 years ago that was all stone. Except the glass is there, but it's inverted through the sky gardens. So there's no direct sun on the glass. Other projects that do this around the world. I was talking to somebody about this project in Mexico City that presents a more solid face to area solar gain and opens up the facade to view in northern light. Okay, principle number 4. Tall buildings should maximize layers of usage. If we're going to expend carbon, then we need to think of as many layers of usage for that carbon as possible. This is a project by Jean Nouvel in Sydney, which has what's called the urban chandelier. This doesn't work. The hangy down thing is the urban chandelier. Yeah? Beautiful sculpture. Woohoo! It's not just a beautiful sculpture, right? So in summer, this roof here has a bunch of mirrors. So in summer, when you don't want solar gain on the project, the sun bounces off these mirrors, underside of that mirrors, and bounces away into the nearby park, reducing solar gain. In winter, the angles of the mirrors change, bounces from that mirror, and then it bounces down through the glass roof of the shopping mall and gives passive solar gain in the space. So it's a beautiful urban chandelier, but it also has an environmental strategy. Power station slash dry ski resort in summer slash ski resort in winter. Yes, there should be a rock climbing wall on every tall building everywhere. Not that I climb rocks, but can you imagine how fantastic that would be? If we're expending carbon and creating something, we need to get maximum numbers of layers of usage on it. I'm passionate about this one. I believe every tall building should have significant public space within it. Oh, I say communal. Actually, communal means the people who use the building. I think it should be public. I think you should allow, these buildings impact the city massively. So I think there should be a commitment to public space in every tall building, somehow. By the way, we've done a lot of research into this at Council. So this was a guide we produced a few years ago, Sky Spaces in Tall Buildings. This was one of the first projects that did it, Commerzbank, Foster's, 1994-7. Every worker in this office building gets access to that sky garden that steps up in the building. It happens all over. Tower that looks like an office tower in Istanbul, but is actually a residential tower. Everyone has a garden. And of course, Shanghai Tower, which has 632 meters of the facade wrapped in garden. I don't know there's many mass timber buildings in Spain, in Madrid. I don't know if it's a big movement, yeah? This is the single biggest game changer in my lifetime, mass timber. Yeah, and we could, not everyone believes that. We could debate why that is, but it's a building material which is happily producing itself for us without any of our help. And it also sequesters carbon while it's producing itself as a building material. So if we get this right, and actually I think the future of mass timber is about hybrid steel timber, concrete timber buildings, because timber on its own can't do what other structural materials do. But even if we just use CLT for the floors, by the way, 80% of the weight of a tall building is in the floors. It's not in the vertical structure, it's in the floors. So if we just replace the concrete with CLT, with timber, that would be a big move. Tallest all-timber building in the world. All timber. All timber. Timber core, timber stairs, timber lift shafts, timber structure, timber facade. What? Timber facade? Can we build 30 stories in timber Well, go and ask the Norwegians, and they're going to show you churches that have been built in timber and survived for 1,000 years. And of course, one of the great advantages of timber, this is a hybrid building, but we can build, it's so light that we can build over existing buildings. Talk about densifying cities. This is a crappy old shopping mall somewhere, Rotterdam, and they built off the existing structure and built 12 stories of residential. Of course, we just published a big timber guide on technical guide. So timber's great, but we can go a stage further. What about living timber? What about vegetation? You know, vegetation on tall buildings. Bringing that vegetation up. We need to bring so much more vegetation into our cities, and I believe we can bring it up into the vertical realm. There are challenges, but I think we can. That's in Milan. Again, we did a technical guide on this. Singapore. You know, one of the advantages in temperate climates is the foliage is thick in summer where you don't want the sun coming through, and thins out for passive solar gain in winter. Cyprus. You remember I started by talking about this homogenization of cities and how all these buildings look the same? If we actually embraced vegetation as a part of our material palette, then first of all, it's an architecture that I think speaks of the challenges of our age, climate change, wellness, all these things, carbon, but it also would produce an architecture which is specific to region because the vegetation would be indigenous, or should be indigenous. So vegetation is good, but we can go further. Vegetation, vegetables, stuff that you eat, fruit and vegetables. This is in Japan. This is not just vegetation. They harvest the stuff and eat it in the office. You know, and there's a lot of projects now that have double skin facades. Yeah, might be tied into the ventilation strategy, or it might be the blinds, to protect the blinds. What? Why can't we do that? This is a real project in India. Facade farming. Otherwise, a sensible office building, but facade farming. Don't waste carbon by putting aluminium blinds up there. Put something there that wants the sun and make it productive. By the way, these guys, scientifically proven, connection to nature has massive benefits in terms of productivity and other stuff. Okay, this one I'm passionate about. This was the subject of my PhD, sky bridges. You know, it's ridiculous that we're going. Did you see there was an announcement yesterday for recently for a 2-kilometer tower in Riyadh? 2 kilometers. I sat on the design jury for that project, so I know that Foster's won it. I knew 18 months ago. Why would you build 2 kilometers? Why would you build 2 kilometers? You ain't going to be able to occupy so much of that building at the top. Yeah? But if we're going to go tall, we've got to bring in the horizontal. Almost every science fiction film of the future envisages the horizontal with the vertical. You know, Petronas Towers was one of the first to do it, but now there are 100 projects around the world. We produced another guide that analyzed them in detail. I'm not talking about bridges. I'm not talking about circulation. I'm talking about urban habitat in the sky. And this is social housing in Singapore, the pinnacle. And you've got sky bridges, sky planes at 3 levels, significant urban habitat in the sky. That leads me on to the next one. The most valuable space in a tall building right now is the roof plane. The roof of every building, actually. Forget tall buildings, the roofs of every building. But in tall buildings, it's the best view, the cleanest environment. Everyone wants to be up there. So what do we do with most roofs? We fill it up with crap, don't we? We put the water tanks, the lift overrun, the satellite dishes. Why do we do that? By the way, we're not waiting for technologies to come and save us as a response to climate change. We're not. We're just waiting for the ability to connect, you know, the solutions that we already have. So we don't have to do that, you know, even if we can't resolve the lift overruns, and we can, Javier will tell us we can, you know, we can still use the spaces, the roofs of these buildings. And if we brought the roof and the sky bridge together, then we get projects like this. And if you've never been to this project, to be in that pool on the 50th floor or in that garden and be on the 50th floor in Singapore and feel like you're in a park is incredible. And, I think to demonstrate that, this is one of my favorite projects, the Interlace in Singapore. Now let's look down on that project. So do you remember where we started with this extruded box or this silly form? Look at this vision of density. You've got 3,000 people living on a plot of land, and they've recreated the original green area of the site 3 times in the sky. Pretty great, eh? Because all the roofs and all the sky gardens and all this stuff Okay, so final bit. Design principle number 10. How does all this come together? We need to bring all aspects of the city up into the sky, right? So bear with me. This is a set of diagrams I have my students put together. It's a little bit utopian, but imagine this. This is an existing city, okay? Mid-rise, low-rise city. It exists right now. Forget the image. Put your mind into it. What I want you to look at here is anything in color. Anything in color signifies infrastructure. Infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I don't just mean linear infrastructure. Linear infrastructure means power, rail, transport, water, sewage, you know, all that. I do mean that. But I mean social infrastructure. School, shop, garden, pavement, doctor's surgery. It all exists at the ground floor in this city. All exists at the ground floor. Some of that linear infrastructure might be a bit below the ground or a bit above, but it's all at the ground floor. Okay, so this city has 1 million people, and over the next 10 years or 20 years, it's going to 10 million. By the way, that is not science fiction. You know what Inigo was saying at the beginning. Here's another data fact for you if you're not aware. United Nations statistics show there are 1 million people urbanizing on this planet every week. 1 million people. Every week. That means we need to build Madrid every month, the equivalent of Madrid every month. So where do those 10 million people go? Can't go outwards because the energy required to create and operate the horizontal city with the land use and the spread out infrastructure is unsustainable. No. So it's got to go vertical. No. Where else can it go? Because every one of those white boxes, every single one of those white boxes is either office, residential, hotel, or some mix of those 3. That is not the city. So I think that we need to think about the tall building as a piece of that infrastructure-rich, 2-dimensional ground plane flipped vertical. With the yes, office, residential, hotel, but with the gardens, with the schools, with the doctor's surgeries, with this social infrastructure. And if we started to link those, then we'd get this idea of, you know, what we at the council call sustainable vertical urbanism. I'm not talking about this for Madrid, by the way. I'm not talking about it for Madrid, but, you know, look at what's happening in the Middle East with the line. The what? The line? You all know that project? You know, I mean, maybe this is I don't know. It's an alternative vision. Okay, right, I've got to finish. I want to finish by just telling you briefly about CTBUH. If you don't know anything about us, founded in 1969, there are more than 2 million people plugged into our network. And I think there's about 8 of you guys plugged in, so we've got to change that. We are multidisciplinary. Our biggest member group are the owner, developer, funder, investors. People at the top of the building food chain. But everyone, architects, engineers, contractors, curtain wall suppliers, everybody's part of our network. We are truly global. 65% of our membership is now outside the US. We have offices in Chicago, Shanghai, and Venice, Italy, where there are no tall buildings. Don't ask me how that happened. It's a research office at the University of Venice. And the red dots here are our chapters. And what's happening here in Madrid with Inigo and others, we hope is going to be the start of a chapter that will continue this discussion beyond today and organize events and research and publications. The last thing is, Inigo mentioned it already. We have a big conference somewhere around the world every year. Last year was Singapore, Chicago, Dubai, Sydney, Shenzhen, New York, keep going. This year's much closer to home for you all. It's in London and Paris. The theme is new or renew, addressing the density dilemma. And this is a massive issue in London. You cannot knock down a building in London now and build a new building without justifying the loss of carbon. And this is coming to all cities soon. Maybe it's already an issue in Madrid. So it's about how do we work with existing buildings, when and how, and not only buildings, but cities. Should we be doing projects like the line, or should we be making existing cities more resilient? It's not really or, it's what are the factors. So the final project I'm going to show you, because Christina keeps giving me the polite, oh, can I finish this or not? Time up, 30 seconds. Okay. This project won our Best Tall Building in the World award last year. 3XN, Danish architects, Sydney. You look at it and think, fantastic. It demonstrates many of the principles I talked about, yeah? It's not an extruded box. It's rotated mass. It's got sky gardens. It's got roof planes. It's all, social spaces in the building. But the best thing about this is that it was this. And it became that. So they managed to keep the 60-story building and build something fantastic around it. So to everyone who says this can't be done, it can be done. And our conference is going to be looking at these and other case studies around the world. So out of today, I hope you'll be interested about CTBUH. You'll talk with Inigo and me and others about joining, but I will see each and every one of you. By the way, I've taken a picture, so I know you're all here. I want to see each and every one of you in London in September. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. It was very good presentation. I'm sure everybody wants to talk to him afterwards. So get ready. And now, let me introduce you to Nayara Vegara. She's the Metropolis Lab Director, Program Head in the Architectural Association in London, and PhD cum laude from the University of Navarra. Her speech is about high-rise, living blocks, and densification patterns.
I'm going to check. Yeah, it works. Hello, good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to be here today, and I would like to share the work of Metropoli. We live in a world of cities. Cities have been growing exponentially across time, and we live in an increasingly urban world. So for us, these cities are key drivers for sustainability. In this context, Fundación Metropoli is an international center of innovations in cities and regions. I would like to introduce you to the background of how Metropoli was born, so you understand our context. Metropoli was born as an academic exercise in the University of UPenn, and we chose 20 different cities around the world to ask the question why some places are competitive, or more competitive than others, why some projects work and others don't. So in this journey, we actually collaborated with experts, local experts and local universities to come up with the basis of a design methodology. This design methodology is what we call territorial intelligence, and is the way that we designed, the way that we think in the context of cities and urban settings. This is our headquarters. We invite you also to visit us. It's in Madrid. We call it the Eco Box. It's a sustainable building. As a little anecdote, this is a huge urban model of the city of Bilbao. We contributed to this strategy of urban renewal of the river and the city. And this model was shipped all the way to Shanghai to be exhibited in the Expo. We actually built it in collaboration with an artist. We feel that these synergies across disciplines, but also artists and architecture are very important, not just to get inspiration, but actually to come up with very innovative solutions. In our offices, we do research, we design, and we also try to foster the implementation of projects. In this context, we are not just one thing, we are three things. We are a foundation, we act as a foundation. We are also a cities lab, where we do our projects, and we are Plus. Plus is actually our platform where we encourage partnerships for leading urban solutions in cities. Just as an example of some of our partnerships that goes in the context of our event, we have some collaboration with UN Habitat or the World Tourism Organization to really foster the implementation of sustainable development goals when we actually start to think and design future cities. Today, in the context of this event, I would like to focus on the topic of densification and how can densification be an opportunity for, or a tool for city making. I'm going to introduce densification in the context or in relationship to mobility first, and then to public space. And for me, the aim is that I would like to introduce some of the design tools that we use in our office at different scales, and always talk as a reference through projects. I'm going to talk a lot about Madrid, as we are in Madrid today, and also contrast with some of our 2 international projects per topic. So densification and mobility. I would like to introduce to this concept of exchange hubs and eco-boulevards within the context of Madrid. In Madrid, we have created a platform called Madrid Innovation Lab. It's a collaboration between Comunidad de Madrid, Madrid Capital Mundial, a cluster of Spanish urban solutions, and ourselves, Metropoli, as a research institution for this ambition. We are thinking about Madrid 2040 and trying to identify opportunities, projects for the city. This is an intensity map of Europe, and you can see Madrid in the context of Europe. And this is Madrid. The M30 is what we call the almond, with the environmental corridors of the city. Every time that we look at a city, we always are we always put the environmental layers on, because we believe in this dialogue between urbanity and its environment. In here, I would like to start to share the importance of a scale. This is the actual structure of the city, but actually this is an intensity map of what is Madrid. Madrid, if we think about parameters of space and time, within 15 minutes from the center of Madrid, we can arrive this far by road. This is 30 minutes, this is 45 minutes, this is 1 hour. Madrid is a 7 million inhabitant city in 1 hour. And actually by fast train, it's actually at 8.6 million inhabitant city. This is the functional space where we think about Madrid, we have to consider. Within this context of mobility, this is the infrastructure of the mobility network of Madrid. Madrid has a very good mobility network. We have an international airport, very close proximity to the city center. We have a north and south main train stations, and we have a very nice, good network of metro and actually trains, metropolitan trains. Now I would like to talk about opportunities. The train stations are hubs that can orient development. This is known like TOD, but now at Madrid we have one of the very important projects called Madrid Nuevo Norte, which is focused on development around the North Station. These are some visuals of Madrid Nuevo Norte, and even though location, because of its mobility, the connectivity capacity is incredible, I think we have the chance to also discuss and talk about the typologies, and how we have now the chance to also talk about what mixed use will be the right ones, what will be the vocation of this node within the city of Madrid. Within our studies, we also thought that the south was a very important node for the city, not just the north. And even though the city of Madrid has done a lot of efforts in balancing north and south, and there is a lot of universities, there's a lot of efforts to insert hospitals, economic clusters, within the aspect of the technological knowledge economy, we have a more intensity of accumulation towards the north. These are things that projects like around the station can really start to encourage other type of vocations in this part of the city. This is a historic map where we could see that is a very special point in the sense of nature, where we can see the Rio Manzanares and the Arroyo intersecting in this point. In contrast, at the moment, it is at a metropolitan scale, one of the most connected places in the whole Madrid. So if it's the most connected places, at the moment we have a barrier, we have a rail land, but we have a very large piece of land that we can start to think about it as different characters and as different elements to actually weave this land into the city and create a node of high dense that could also, because of the impact of the metropolitan connectivity that it has, we can think about the role that this actually development could have for the city of Madrid. These are some exercises of actually suggestions of possible connectivities across this piece of land. Within our study, not only in the stations, but we found very special nodes which are in the M40 and in the intersection with the highways, radial highways that come across from the core of Madrid. We call this node, and then one thing that is important is that when you think about the M40, we all associate this to a peripheral or a periphery status of the Madrid, but actually within the functional Madrid, they're in the core of Madrid. So these special nodes for us, we call it the exchange hubs. Exchange hubs have the capacity, because of their connectivity that they have, to become last mile connectivity for the city, to actually be points for exchange of mobility, opportunities to develop new eco-communities. So actually they are intensity points that can really give the M40 a very important role for the city. This also gives us another opportunity, which is actually to release tension and weight from the M30, which is now an inner city highway. The inner city highway has now the chance to actually be rethought, like what if instead of having inside of our city a highway, we can have an eco-boulevard. So now this is the condition of the M30, a physical barrier, but it's also a social barrier. So actually we envision this as an opportunity to become one of the most important or largest decarbonization projects in Europe. This is the condition of now, today, and this is a suggestion of what could it be. This section actually is introducing a lot of important ingredients. I would really like to highlight that for us, the introduction of public transport is key. A highway cannot carry public transport. And also the other aspect is for transversal connectivity from one side of the city to the other side of the city. If we zoom in, you will start to see also other details, such as the insertion of activity towards the edges, insertion of public space, insertion also of new typologies of building that sometimes, because of the topographic different and levels, we can start being very experimental in understanding what a building looks like in these edges. Changing a highway for a public realm or to integrate it in the city has been done before. So I think it's very important to understand when we look at this ambition of the M30 becoming an eco-boulevard to also think around the world. That was Seoul, this is San Francisco, or this is Boston, that some cities did take that ambition and actually carry it forward. Even actually as a concept of the eco-boulevard, I wanted to highlight that we have one in Madrid, which is La Castellana. La Castellana is an example of an eco-boulevard. This is the scale of La Castellana and the M30 compared. And actually this is a suggestion of possibilities of the M30 in terms of connectivity. This is now a barrier, and we suggest that by doing this integration, we can have a much connected and healthy city. Now, this concept of the eco-boulevard in Madrid, in our city, I wanted to also contrast or showcase other eco-boulevards in other contexts of the world. This is Casablanca. Casablanca, this is the core. In the core of the Casablanca, some of the planning principles that were applied was also Le Boulevard, but it's only applied in the core of the city. We can find sections like this with a lot of transversal connectivity, greenery, and the difficulty or some of the let's see, ambitions that we are trying to reach is actually in a metropolitan scale. When we start to see the sprawl, the residual sort of voids of a space, the lack of public realm, the lack of integration of development. When we're doing our research, we look at a space syntax to understand also the mobility, and we saw a route that has a special connectivity. Actually, this highway connects Casablanca all the way to Rabat. And we find it as an opportunity to become a strategy for linear densification for the city in order to actually combat this sprawling that is happening in this site and to actually concentrate development in actual plots and voids that are already there. This is the Castellana compared with the section of this now highway, road, and these are some comparison of transversal connectivity. These are some of the exchange hubs, some of the, let's say, intersections that we see that have more potential for more intense or more special connectivity within the line. And this is the condition now. And we would like it to change to being more city, as is an inner city metropolitan eco boulevard, and to transform a road that is now just an infrastructure to little by little, with a strategy of densification and public space to make city. Another example that I would like to compare to this one is in Colombia. In Colombia, we did a project that was 10 cities. It was World Smart City Award in 2017. And now today, I'm just going to concentrate in one of the cities in one eco boulevard, in Cartagena. It's very important to understand the location of the cities, not only at a metropolitan scale, but as a system of cities. Cartagena, and the environment, of course. Cartagena, this is the urban structure of Cartagena, environmental, and this is the road infrastructure. We actually were investigating at why there was so much congestion in the center of Cartagena, and actually it's because of this radiocentric organization. One of our first proposals for the city of Cartagena to have a more sustainable development was to actually propose an arc, a road that was, as you see it, connecting to Barranquilla, but at the same time to rearrange some of the logistics activities around this arc. This would allow us to actually be able to envision in this very connected main avenue an eco boulevard. With Eco Boulevard, I mean as well the public transportation, the public space. This is the condition right now. And it has the potential to actually intensify, densify both of the sides of this road and really choreograph public realm, public transport, and even sustainable solutions in the way that we think about architecture and the technology implemented in the public space. Now, this impact of linear mobility, I was mentioning a lot public space. So I'm going to now jump to densification, not only related to mobility, but related to how to build urbanity. I'm going to jump all the way to Hanoi. In this scenario in Southeast Asia, Hanoi is a city that is growing very rapidly. Here we can see Hanoi in relationship to the Gulf of Tonkin. And our project, the Eco Park, which was, and the industrial zones that are emerging and growing around the capital center. I think it's very important to show the urban context of Hanoi. This is the city, like the central part, and this was actually the urbanity in 1999, but this is the urbanity in 2019. The growth and the sprawling effect that of this urbanity is very impressive. And this is our project here, the Eco Park. And the Eco Park, in this context, for us it was very important to understand how it can relate with the center of the cities and some initiatives there, but also to the sprawling. So it doesn't become another residential island with no use, mixed use, or with no connectivity, or how can it actually serve all the industrial zones in the site? One of our urban strategies was to connect some of the renewal efforts of the river and the innovation corridor all the way to our site. I wanted to also highlight that in our process of design, we include processes of participation where we mix technical studies with perceived studies. These perceived studies give us consensus of some of the topics that or key concepts that we wanted to implement. The context of our site is actually surrounded by residential areas, and we wanted to create an intensity node, mixed use, that could actually provide services to the surroundings and create a more polycentric structure around Hanoi. We wanted to shape this urbanity first by public space and relating it to the water edge, a very important concept that is not that maybe common in this context of Hanoi, and give major roads for pedestrian mobility and inner blocks that were going to be shared. In terms of some of the examples of our blocks, one of our main issues was to really have pedestrian zones around these ones just for pedestrians, and due to the high density, some of the vehicular access could happen inside of the block. So he was, in this case, because of the context, was reversed to actually give the space to the public realm around the water edge. And one of the most important elements to have a mixed-use strategy within the living block. This is some of the atmospheres that we actually envisioned for this project. And now I'm going to jump to a very different context where it's in Chile. It's called the Batuco. And in Chile, our eco-city is located in the range of 30 minutes, 45 minutes distance from the center of Santiago. Within these processes of participations, apart from doing these perceived processes, we also did benchmarkings of how do European eco-communities are designed, but also the structures of mixed use, and how this is one of how the structure of vehicular structure, space, public space, mixed use, and densities of residential units were actually achieved. This is Arriguren, another exemplar of an eco-community in the north of Spain, in Pamplona. And actually, what is very interesting is that all gave very interesting relationships to public space. And this is Malmo, one of the exemplars that is unique as well because it doesn't have any vehicular transportation within this scale of block, which for us is very interesting to understand the scale of the block. In our Batuco eco-city, one of the most important elements was actually to be inspired by the nature and the context of the place. So this is the landscapes of the territory, the mountains, this is the valley. And our eco-city is actually possible because they're going to open or reopen a train line that used to be closed and is going to be operative again. So the core of Batuco used to be there once that train station was working, and now they're going to open it again. So we associated this line with other mobility strategies in order to locate and design this eco-city. In this relationship to nature, for us, this dialogue with existing ecosystems was key to design our blocks. This is the example of one of our districts. We call it District G, District Green. And I wanted to just showcase the sensitivity of how public realm starts first and then the urbanity. We have some ecological corridors that we want to protect, frame, and be able to also engage with. We have hierarchies of public spaces, and then mixed typology. Another important issue is the mixed use, moments of programmatic opportunities within the block in certain amount of distances. And as an exemplar of a section, how densities are choreographed in relationship to if they're in the main road, if they are facing one of the natural assets, or if they are, for example, by the station, or where most of this exchange happens, where we have bigger densities and more mixed use. This is an example of the block. Another element that I would like to highlight is that the vehicular movement happens on the edge of large-scale blocks in order to leave for pedestrian accessibility this inner block. For us, this is a blocks where you can live, work, and play within each of these living blocks. Now I would like to conclude going back to Madrid, because I've been showing new grains, new districts in Batuco and in Hanoi that were, let's say, designed from zero. But what if we already have an urbanity that is there? How do we engage? How do we start framing strategies of public space? So within the interior of the M30, within our studies, we are proposing to change the scale in which we think about the urban grid. This is the actual grid now, and what we are thinking is this concept of living blocks, in Spanish, células de vida urbana, where we actually have the vehicular hierarchy in a larger scale, and we can let's say, open up some of these streets to a more lively, vibrant elements that can invade these streets. So if this is the line, this is the plan of Madrid. The green lines are actually places that we could be given for the pedestrians, and the gray ones are the ones that we actually need for having a good functionality. This would be the 310 células de vida urbana, or living blocks, that we could have within the M30. And in these exercises, I just wanted to showcase one of our prototypes, which would be, for example, in the Salamanca district. And this is how it works now. Even mobility across all the blocks. And what we are proposing is to enhance mobility at a different scale and open up the inner block to other types of opportunities for public space and uses, and even rethink how we are using the facades and the tops of these buildings, and create these clusters of living blocks that will transform some of these streets to a more friendlier, sort of sustainable environments to have city life. Within this context, I wanted to also integrate that we look just at a prototype of a living block. This drawing I like a lot, which is the villages that created Madrid. In Madrid, we have different districts, so it's important not to understand Madrid as a one-off character. There are different characters in every district. Every district or barrio has different setouts. These are isochrones from each center of these cores of these neighborhoods, and we think it's very important to also do and envision in this next step the scale of the district, and how I'm going to zoom in one of them. This is Alcobendas, which is in the outside of the M30. And not only to have a strategic vision means to also only talk about mobility and identify large plots, but there is a lot of grain and little projects that can really affect and really create city in different ways. One, obviously, of the more important things is to protect our heritage and cultural buildings. So we work on strategies of how we protect things that are there. But also, I think we have to value the things that are there and might not have that cultural or historic element into it, but actually have opportunities to transform. And actually, in complementation with these strategies of public realm, we can really change our environment in healthier, more livable city spaces. In here, I would like to also highlight that sometimes if we are in a condition like this, where it's a monotony of the same typology with not, let's say, engagement to the public space, the person might not feel a belonging to this place, might not feel very inspired to walk in his streets. But if we start having a more dynamic understanding of how we can transform these facades, how this public space can also, not in this section, but maybe in the others a bit different, and start thinking about the district scale in relation to the street, we can have a very interesting results. This is one example of one street. We can actually find pockets that maybe are now obsolete, or maybe some industries are not operative. So we can start to think how public realm in relation to maybe new typologies can start to transform some of our districts into more vibrant and livable spaces. So just to conclude, I think that I presented a narrative of projects that really varied in scales. And for me, the conclusion that I wanted to transmit today is how densification can be a tool for placemaking, but also city making. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayara. I think very important, all the work that you guys are doing around the world. Very interesting, like all the work. I think we need to follow this up because they're transforming the cities. And I want to remind you all that if you want to make some questions, we're going to have time afterwards in the coffee, so you can approach to any of those people and let them know whatever you think. But now, let me introduce you to Mark Fenwick. He's the co-founder and architect of Fenwick Iribarren Architects, who is going to talk about educational centers and high-rise buildings.
Hello there. Hello? Hello. Thank you very much. And I'd like to say thank you to Inigo and Enrique for this, organizing this event and inviting me to it. And also, Anthony, thank you for the talk, and see how many points I get out of your 10 points in my building. I think we're over 5, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're going to go over a project which is a scheme we finished very recently, which I'm sure you all know, which is started being the 5th tower, but is now called Kaleido. It's not called Kaleido Tower, because it's more than a tower, it's another thing. They get very annoyed if I say Kaleido Tower. So it's Kaleido. And I'd like to go through the whole story about how we went through this, the idea of the project and the scheme and everything, which I think you was done. So we again, looking at the idea of the cities and what you were trying to explain before, we felt that cities, when they started, there's this explosion outwards into the surrounding city, and actually, small residual parts created, and we begin to feel that we have to do sort of like an implosion inwards, and picking up on the little packages and creating a recovery of green areas and different spaces that are of a more human scale, and bringing back a little bit of a different sort of typology of the city, like you were explaining in your talk earlier on. And so in this project that we did, you'll see that we started with a project or an area of Madrid which was a bit of a wound in the city. We call it a wound in the city because there was an old building there. And we wanted to bring back certain ideas of the green lung, of how the topography of the ground could bring back interest into it and bring back the use for people in the city. We think that it's an opportunity to bring people back into the city. So you can see here there are the 2 projects that are in the north of Madrid, the site of the 4 towers and the site of Kaleido, which you can see we hope there's an evolution there in how we treat tall buildings and how we treat how they sit in the city. So we started off with this, talking about renewal or refurbishment. Actually, we had to build on top of a ruin. It wasn't a ruin. There was going to be another very big conference center in Madrid. So we had there was this about 60,000 square meters of white concrete underground, which is basically the parking and the loading bays, and which had a strict, rigorous sort of like spans between them. And we had to build on top of that. So we actually had this big, as I said, it's basically a very a wound in the city that we had to resolve. The way we did it is we actually started building into that, and in fact where the tower is, the only place we did not use the foundations of the building is where the tower is, because obviously the conditions of the tower needed different structural format than the rest of it. So this is the underground areas, and that were already existing, which were amazing, by Emilio Tognoni Mansilla. These spaces almost like a museum, white concrete, which I've never been. We were not allowed to use one more bit of white concrete from here upwards because our developer said that was too expensive. So how do we handle this? The tower, because of the typology and the uses within the building, we weren't going up too high. We were not going to get up to the height of the other 4 buildings. And instead of that being something bad, we wanted to turn it into something we thought was slightly better. We didn't want to compete with the other 4 buildings, and we did not want it to be looked at as a little building. So we really felt that what we would like to do is to develop something which was timeless, and we looked back into the origins of architecture. We looked back into my sort of earlier favorite buildings. Even the Seagram building was one of the early ones. I think it's more than just a box, but I mean, it is actually something that starts something. And these buildings were beautiful for many reasons, proportions and the simplicity of the form. Here we can see the way the structure on the outside is shown as well in the early days, and also they were black. And so we thought we would like to make a black building for many reasons. So in a way, what we wanted to do was to, rather than make a small building, is to make a big monument in the city. And so comparing it with other buildings, actually we are just about 4 meters below the Seagram building, so it's in that sort of like height of the building within the city. And we do have a slightly different proportion, so we didn't want to copy Ms. van der Rohe in the proportion. Again, going back to what you were saying, we did not want to make spectacular architecture. We wanted to be more humble. We wanted to do an architecture more of the shadow than in the glare. We wanted to do something that was not that was beautiful by the proportions, but not by the shape. And that's something that we really felt was going to be something slightly going against the tendencies of today, in the world today, of every new building has to be more spectacular. We said, no, we'll be the shadow in that. We also wanted to do very slender proportions. This is a beautiful set of sculptures in the desert of Qatar that we went to see by Richard Serra, which are these very thin steel monoliths which are set out in the desert. It's absolutely beautiful if you can get to go there. But it is absolutely this idea of a very simple monument in the desert is again something that possibly we drew from. So what we wanted to do was to draw something very simple. You'll see later on this inverted L shape. So it's a tower or it's a vertical tower on a horizontal tower, which makes a very simple shape indeed. And when we were doing the tower and the proportions, and we were looking at the sizes and designing the width, which were also based on what was coming from below, one of my favorite films of all time is 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. And the monolith, which is in the Stanley Kubrick film, which is this very black monolith that draws the light in, has the proportion of 149, which is the square of 1, the square of 2, and the square of 3. The Kaleido Tower is the same proportion, exactly the same proportion. It is 149. And so we really wanted this sort of idea of the sort of these references to the film, which is a reference which personally was quite enjoyable to me, but also that slight reference that in the film 2001, the monolith is the essence of knowledge. In the film, when people touch it, the apes in the beginning attain knowledge and all the rest of it. And the fact that this is a university, thought was also where you will obtain knowledge. So again, this sort of flow of some sort of symbolism we thought would be, you never know about it until I tell you about it, but the fact it's there in the background is something that we went ahead in the project. And again, as they say, those who designed it wanted to show it remain unmoved by the greatest lunar earthquakes. They were building for eternity. We want buildings to be buildings without fashion, which are slightly void of fashion, and which are eternal, or at least they can remain timeless within the cities which they sit in. As I said, here we have the proportions, and that's something that again we are losing in architecture, in the sort of Renaissance, and proportions were incredibly important in building. Even Corbusier worked in the sense of proportions. So this idea of bringing back actual very precise proportions in the tower and in the base, which is 1:4:16, was something that we thought would be quite interesting to validate a sort of a mathematical approach to the beauty of the building itself. And as you can see, this is not from the Castellana side, from Sinesio Delgado, this idea of the inverted T section, which is very simple, but also very, I think, very beautiful. So here are some of the first drawings, which I keep saying I still like to keep using the white piece of paper and a pencil, like most of you here, a lot of you here. And so these are some of the studies that we did just to do the design from all different angles. We thought this was important to get this eye, and these are the drawings that we showed to the client and convince them to go on with this. We'll go into a bit later on as well. This idea is that we also have a very strong sense of urban interconnection. The building, one of the things this building could have been was a wall. It could have been a great big division or a divider of urban communities, but we wanted to make it become an urban connector of different communities, both north and south and east and west. So as we go on, we'll see how we really want to create these urban connections through the building, under the building, into the interconnecting spaces, and to create the urban realm. This is something that we think is incredibly important, and we'll talk about that. Again, a tower and a university. One of the things sometimes we look for models. How many universities have ever been built in a tower? Practically none, or not many that I know of. One of my favorite projects when I was a student, James Stirling in Liverpool, at the engineering building, OMA in China, but really built, there are not many universities done in a vertical scenario, or in a tower, which I'm not sure of those 2,000 or thousands, how many are actually universities. It's also a multi-use building, not very common in Spain, not very common in Madrid, a building that has different uses in it. So we have a building which is the IE University, which is the blue. We have a clinic, the Quirón Clinic, which is going to be a sports and investigation clinic. And then we wanted to introduce a commercial area into the building. We feel that commercial, this live, work, play, you know, where you can go and eat something. The four towers of you go there. There's really nowhere to go to eat. It's a barren landscape. So we wanted to create an urban realm which would bring back life and urbanity to this project. And so the tower and this park in the front here. Just to go through the building, this is the lobby. We wanted this big open space. The greatness of being able to do 60 meters wide is that we are able to have glass on both sides of the building, looking out both ways. Also, the beauty of it is, even though it is a black glass, we worked incredibly hard with the developers of glass, that from the inside, it's absolutely transparent. It's not like the old glass many, many years ago, many generations ago. You now have a glass which is tremendously transparent, which is nice. It was also, the black also, I think, is one of the things in the towers we don't like to do. I wanted to keep the idea of a black uniformity without seeing the different levels, which I think sometimes becomes complex with the blinds behind it. So the idea is to create a public space, or how do we do a university in a vertical tower? And we felt that we needed to create spaces for leisure and social interaction, and in that way, we almost put the tower as if it was on the ground. The lifts become the streets, and then we create plazas and urban spaces in the tower, because towers sometimes are very one upon floor upon floor upon floor. We wanted to break that and to break up into the space of the tower these double height spaces. So if you see a section through the building, we interfaced open spaces in the middle and on the outside as you go up. And what this did is we created within the university special spaces for the social interaction between the students, rather than in streets and plazas, but in the vertical scenario. But it also gave rise to very interesting spaces indeed. So you can hear this is the School of Architecture on floor 22 and 23. So you can see the central space in the middle, which is where they have social and presentations for architecture, and the upper floors where are the classrooms, and you can see the light on both sides. But this idea of breaking up the space in the tower and breaking up double height spaces, making urban spaces in the tower itself, has proved very successful. And you can look down, and we didn't choose the furniture. these ones, but they're quite exciting. We worked very hard also on the idea, because it had to work. I mean, it was a very thin tower, so the idea is we actually designed and developed with the IE and with the architect of the IE, Serrano Suñé, who worked with us on the, because he's the architect of the IE, to create these very special classroom areas which could open up the walls in between and create a circular classroom. And then you'll see in Kaleido there's the spaces which open up a bit is where the classrooms are to provide the spaces on the outside. And these classrooms are working incredibly well. Because of COVID, this was finished just after the COVID, but again, all the technology, the video conferencing is actually amazingly good. And on the side, outside the classrooms, are the spaces where we have for the use between the lectures. In the upper part of the tower is the administrative areas in a very thin, about 16 meters wide. This is the staff area on the level 24. And one of the things we like to do in towers is to produce a terrace. Again, have an outdoor space up high. And if you can see here just a little bit, you can just about see that this staff room goes out onto two terraces on either side, looking out over the city to the north and the south. So that's another point, isn't it? Yeah. There you go. There we are. And some of the staff room areas, etc. So here we have the terrace looking out over the city at the height, which is fantastic. To be able to go outside in a tower and to use the roof, I think that's something that's super important in any building at whatever level. And then at the lower level, this is the horizontal tower. In the blue is the actual IE areas that we had to build, which could not be built in a tower, because in a university you can't put some of the big areas into the tower. The yellow on the other side is the Quirón Hospital. But for instance, we have a different entrance hall there on the ground floor. So again, big, spacious entrance hall, which then goes into the Aula Magna, which is the big, basically auditorium, where all the big events for the IE occur, the prize giving, the diploma giving, and everything like that. Again, taking great care in making it sort of an architecture very, in fact, this is just a undulating plastic panel, which has got some light behind it. Again, a very, I wouldn't say cheap material, but used in the right way, it's very effective and looks amazing in the space. Also, they have these sports areas, which again are required not just to be sports, but also they have fairs here, they have presentations, prize giving, and they do many events in here. Again, as you see, one of the important things is by the topography is we try to make everything look like it's on the ground floor. It's not in a basement, because you have the areas looking out over there, and they use that and a small swimming pool. So they live quite well, actually. I think that shows in the fees of the IE, but it certainly is worth it as they go through. So that is the way through there. One of our statements in this project, which is one of many, I think, is that I think architects, when they design towers, are thinking primarily in the level 300 or 200 upwards. They are thinking, I am going to do this enormous icon in the city. I want everyone to see the top of my tower and everything else. We tried to think about the level 0. We wanted to work on the level 0 and to humanize the level 0. We wanted it to be an area for people to be there, to work, to sit, to create terraces, green areas. So even though we were very conscious about the responsibility of building a tall building, we also felt that we wanted to make a very strong statement in how we make the level 0 work. And what we actually did is the building, this is the platform of the Castellana, and this is Kaleido. And we treated it a bit like a transatlantic cruise ship when you come into the port. And we actually separated it, about 8 meters, from the platform, and in fact you enter Kaleido across these bridges or gangways as if you're going into the cruise ship. But why did we do that? We did that because you all know that around towers there's a lot of wind and there's vortex, and it is sometimes quite uncomfortable, especially if you go around the 4 towers. So by using computer analysis and by doing wind tunnel, by dropping this street lower down and protecting it on its side, we actually created an urban street with an urban dimension, with a human dimension of width and height. So people walking along here, even though they are surrounded by these 250 high square meters, and that's 180, actually have a perception of a very small streetscape. And we thought that was quite interesting for them to be able to feel that humane and human scale as well. And as we talked again about the human connections, we have the street, but we also created urban plazas as well, which is the other urban realm area, where we, using this idea of crossing through, we thought that we would then, by creating these connections, it was actually very good for Kaleido because it allowed people to walk through and to use the street and to use the plazas and to become a part of a scenario of the community. The 4 towers have about 26,000 people in them, and the tower has 6,500 students. So we're talking about over 30,000 people who will service this new urban realm where very little was there before. So that we thought that this idea of very much looking at the ground floor and looking at how to humanize level 0 and not think only about level 200, we thought that was a different way to look at a tower building. And also, as you go around Kaleido, we thought we should introduce art. And so we have a great number of pieces of art which are in this as well. So we're introducing architecture, art, and all the different ideas as we get. This was one of the earlier drawings we had with this red staircases going down. But these are some of the studies as we worked in the 3D. But this idea of creating spaces that drop down into the urban street. But again, if you know, there's a big video screen here where they can do the World Cup or something like that. So again, this landscape turns into an auditorium. It turns into something you can become a community space. We're bringing the art into it as well. Lots of art pieces, and then these cubes, which also is another part of the commercial on the ground floor. So you can see the video screen at the end there. And it's used like that. It's very interesting. And to create this sort of diversity in materials, diversity in volumes, diversity in shapes, which makes this street become a very urban and active street. Okay, so that's really where we are. And we did these sort of almost glass houses, which a little bit, the idea was a bit like the market of San Miguel market, where you have little stalls underneath it and things can happen there. Obviously, it's related to a very young community because the students in the IE are very young, and also in the towers. But it's a great place to go, and you can see here some more of the art as well. But also, one of the things is this is the bottom side of Kaleido is to use the roof. We are using the roof as a garden. So Kaleido has this enormous sort of garden on the roofscape, which they use a lot. So here we have the roofscape and the way we have the different terraces going on. The roof terrace on both of the sides of the roof, looking over the city as well, and very large spaces. And finally, one of the things which we wanted to make it become is a green, sort of a green lung for the city. So we were asked to develop the park around it, a 3-hectare park around Kaleido, but not just the park itself, but also the areas around it, and also the roof of the 2 sides of the thing become urban parks and the more natural organic parks, which if you go and see it, there's a very difficult topography, which was made it very difficult, but also the idea of inclusivity, even without very difficult levels there, totally usable for wheelchairs and for bringing in different textures, different colors, different smells, herbs and different types of grass, and it's obviously it will take a long time to grow and to become a mature park, but we think the combination of the tower, the urban spaces, the urban realm, the urban connectivity, and the simplicity of the tower make it quite a unique building for Madrid, and I think that's really where you are. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you for bringing back some life to that area, because it was in a bit of need of some restaurants, bars, and things to do. And you are the one that is responsible for now all the universities. They want to go back to the city, so good job. And now let me introduce you to Javier Sesma. He's the Senior Vice President of Global Business Development of TK Elevators, who is going to present together with Pedro Martín, CEO of Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Africa of TK Elevators. They will talk about mobility design with people in mind.
So thank you very much. I think if this is about exams. Let's see how we can connect with the previous presentations also. So first of all, I would like to thank CTBUH, Anthony. I would also like to thank Íñigo, Ortiz.León, Associates, and also Maria Antonia for all the excellent organization, and also thank you for the host to having us here. We are going to present, Pedro and myself, our vision about mobility design with people in mind. With United Nations forecasting about 70% of the world population living in cities, I think we need to do something different. So buildings are becoming vertical cities, and we need to aspire to make better cities, better places to live. We need to aspire to do good places where we can work, live, and entertain. So mobility design with humans in mind is about humanizing places. It's about connecting buildings, people, and places, not just physically, but also socially, not just in heights, but also through neighborhoods, to make more advanced, inclusive, socially acceptable, and also digital connected places. So what we wanted to share with you within the next minutes is mainly three ideas. The first one is about passenger experience. It's about incorporating new technologies from the traditional idea of pushing technologies to have them customer-centric. We will move to renew, repurposing existing buildings and sharing our experience about moving from the analogical world to the digital, moving from the linear to the circular. And in the last part, Pedro will share also about how we can humanize the city, how we can connect people and places, and also how we can move beyond the elevator shaft towards more sustainable and accessible cities. Let me just share with you just 30 seconds about TK Elevator. So TK Elevator, for most of you, ThyssenKrupp Elevator, ThyssenKrupp Elevadores in Spain, is a company of 9 billion euros. We work 50,000 people, 25% are technicians, presence in 100 countries, and serving customers from 1,000 locations. And what do? We move people, goods, and data. And ESG is an integral part of our strategy. And maybe just to highlight some of the elements of it. So in the last 4 years, since becoming an independent company, we have been in the category A list from CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, also top rated by EcoVadis and Sustainalytics. So let's get to it. Probably most of you share with me that elevator is, or maybe was, one of the most boring places in buildings. And one of our challenges is how we can make it more attractive, how we can convert the elevator experience in something different. So let me share this. This is Manhattan. This is the One World Trade Center. This is the express elevator to the observatory deck, where passengers, probably first time, I got by surprise, and they start to see how the city was developed, all the nice buildings that you have designed. You can start to see how New York skyline was changing, and also enters into the real experience about going to the observation deck. And what happens when they leave? What is the last experience they have when they leave the observation deck? We make them fly. We make them fly around Manhattan, like if they were in a helicopter. Maybe the first impression is a little bit of surprise. What is happening here? As soon as they start to be comfortable, they take the mobiles, make a selfie, perhaps share it in social media. So that is what we are aiming for, transforming the passenger experience. Obviously, very good project for us with more than 80 elevators and escalators. If you go to New York, please visit. I hope you're going to have a very enjoyable experience. But we also have buildings designed with humans in mind. Let me just briefly share with you the example of Torre de Cristal, designed by Cesar Pelli and Associates, and also construction execution by Ortiz.León. This is the tallest building in Spain, but it's also the fastest elevator in Spain. And has already integrated some of the elements, I think, Anthony, you were mentioning, like vertical garden in the sky, also seamless, contactless calls through the elevators. But when we are speaking about buildings, this is not about just going in high, it's also about integrating the community. This example of BBVA headquarters, La Vela, where integrates everything, very good project also for us, where in this case the challenge was not about high-speed elevator, was not about high-rise, was about taking care of the details and customizing the elevator cabins aligned with the cultural and the spirit of BBVA. Just one data, Anthony, and I'm not competing with you, but just one data. About 62% of the consumers in 2030 are going to demand touchless technologies. Touchless technologies are going to become the new standard. So today we are already enabling contactless calls through your mobile phone, through your smartwatch, something that can be integrated in repurposing buildings, but also we are also integrated in robots. Let me share this example. This is Loft Hotels in the US, a use case that we experienced some years ago. What was the challenge for the hotel manager? So some of the customers were staying in that hotel. They used to buy e-commerce, fast food, and they need to have 2 additional shifts to serve those customers that were not buying those goods in the hotel. And the challenge was, how can we make that operation more efficient? So we started to explore autonomous robots. We enabled them to speak to the elevators through APIs and let them move freely around the building. What started as an initial room service with autonomous robots now is robots moving within hotels that can do room service, can do surveillance, can do cleaning, and now start to spread in some other areas of the world. So we truly believe vertical cities are going to become hyper-connected experiences, where people will work, will live, will entertain, where people will move vertically and horizontally, where artificial intelligence will also help for smart building occupancy management, where health and well-being might not be just an extra rather than a standard, and where universal accessibility is going to enable the movement of people, goods, robots, and data. Let me just move to repurpose of existing buildings, and share a little bit our experience from moving from the analogical to the digital, from the linear to the circular. Last year in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, we were celebrating with the CTBUH community the 20th year anniversary of a very unique technology, twin. This is about having two independent cabins moving in the same shaft. What we call two cabs, zero crowds. So what started to be first an element of making the core of the building more efficient, particularly when we are speaking about mixed-use buildings, because they don't have a lot of interfloor traffic, becomes today a unique value proposition when we are thinking about repurposing commercial buildings to mixed use. When we are speaking about blocking different elements of the building or repurposing existing buildings. Let me share some example. This is Trinity Tower, best office building by CTBUH in 2022. In this case, the architects, Crow and the developer, Univel Rodanco, choose twin technology. They not just design an amazing building where you can see the activity, nice spaces, people connected, but they also were one of the first ones opening the elevator core to Paris La Défense. Typically, elevator core is in the middle of the building, but they wanted to connect the people and the activity of the building to the central business district of Paris. Another example, Hudson Yards, 50 Hudson Yards. This is the fourth largest development in New York, designed by Foster & Partners and developed by Related. One of the main challenges we were having in this building is having two anchor tenants, a very famous financial company worldwide and also technological company that require a lot of interfloor traffic. This was a challenge because the number of elevator shafts they needed didn't make the building work. What did we do? We just took best of the elevator technology. So we just choose double-deckers to access to the sky lobbies and twins to enable interfloor traffic, making the work in that vertical office more efficient. Just another anecdote. Meanwhile, they were designing the project, they had to enable some of these floors that was only possible due to twin. Hudson Yards, a very good reference for TK Elevator. We have supplied more than 160 different elevator platforms. What was also interesting about all this development that we all connected all these elevators to the cloud. And during the pandemic, we were able to create virtual social distancing by controlling the traffic in the building and also being able to virtually separate the occupants in the building. Another data. About 75% of the working population in 2030 are going to be natively digital. And we truly believe they will probably demand different living services, connected and fully accessible. Spain is one of the, I think it's the 5th or 7th biggest market in the world because for elevators, because the way we have been developing buildings, multifamilies. And that's why also about 1 year ago, the team of Pedro also here in Móstoles developed a new product, which is the day-to-day elevator becoming digital, becoming eco-efficient. A belted elevator where we not just become more efficient than the existing platforms, but we also design prior to the artificial intelligence wave, already designed with NVIDIA chip. the brain of EOX is already ready for artificial intelligence, and is also connected to the cloud. And also, we have also created different interactive elements, infotainment, but also swipe right. So what is a little bit our journey? So we started in 2003 probably with maybe the first digital elevator that was twin. Why? Because we needed to control the position of the cabin at every moment in the shaft. We moved to connect the elevators in 2015 together with Microsoft. And now we bring to the market a new product which is cognitive, which understands the environment, which is ready for artificial intelligence. We like to say that service is really the heart of the elevator business. I know most of the people today, I mean, we like to think on new installation, but really what matters is about the life cycle of the elevator through the life of the building. And not just during the normal service, but also managing obsolescence. Maybe another data. About 20 million elevators and escalators are moving between 1 to 2 billion of people per day in the world. Probably elevator is the most used transportation system. And between 30% of that are already 20 years old. Can you imagine that in any other mean of transportation? So what is the challenge we are having? I think same with buildings. I mean, how we can maximize the life cycle of this equipment, minimizing the CO2 impact, minimizing the embodied carbon. And just to finish, a couple of examples. BMW headquarters. Just right after the pandemic, they decided to redesign all their floor space. I mean, you can figure out all these windows are small offices for executives. And that we needed to bring additional 400 people in a 1,000 building. So we use the twin technology to increase the capacity, but also the comfort and also safety within the building. An example here in Madrid, which is Alfredo Mao building, Adesla's tenant. In this case, using destination selection control, we are able to increase the capacity by 20%. Not just private, but also public buildings, Ministerio of Economía. Just using destination selection control, we can improve significantly the average waiting time and the time to destination. And let me finish this time with something which probably is very unique in Spain. In Spain, we have the biggest airport operator in the world, which is AENA. AENA is managing 47 airports. And we have probably the most modern metro line in Europe, which is Metro Madrid. So applying the same concept, the same mentality, we have extended the life cycle of about 600 multi-brand elevators and escalators for another 10 years, reducing the embodied carbon, increasing the comfort, the accessibility, and the aesthetics. And with that, I'll hand over to Pedro. Pedro, floor is yours.
Javier, thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pedro Martin, and I'm going to tell you how our company, TK Elevator, contributes and collaborates in the renew part of the motto that has been chosen for this conference. And I'm not going to talk about tall buildings or high-rise. This is not so sexy part, you know, but it's shorter than Javier's one. So I'm going to talk about general urban habitat, the renew of urban habitat. Urbanization shall be, we know it, sustainable and inclusive. But we all know also that cities of today are agents of pollution creation. 65% of travel kilometers are urban. 36% of the total greenhouse gas pollution is coming from urban buildings. But we have also fortunately, we have some ways to minimize this impact. For example, we can reduce the total CO2 emissions of a city from 30 to 80% reduction by pedestrianization of several areas, big areas of the city. For that, if we want to do that, of course, we have to offer to the citizens an alternative and a clean transport system. Population is aging. The segment of population that is 65 years old or over is growing much, much faster than any other population segment. In 2022, this part of the population was 10%. It will be 20% in 2050, and it will double the segment of population of children of 5 years old or less, which is a big, big change, and it's a big challenge for the societies of the 21st century. Buildings are aging also. Here you have some data about Spanish situation. We have 54% of households that were built before 1980. So in these buildings, the mobility systems are pretty obsolete. We have almost 1 million of households in Spain that are belonging to buildings with 3 floors or more without any elevator in the building. Only 0.6% of the buildings in Spain have universal accessibility. And according to some prospects, we will have by 2030, 5.5 million of homes occupied by one single person, and 40% of this will be a person of 65 years old or over. Of course, cities are evolving. 56% of the worldwide population today is living in cities, but by 2050 it will be 70%. This is going to stress and to tension our lives, and this is going to change how we plan cities and how we renew our cities. One of the biggest problems in cities with difficult topography, with areas with that the access to them is not so easy, is that they are at risk to be abandoned by the economic development agents and really become areas of poverty and even criminal activities. Persons with disabilities, all this segment of the population has been the great forgotten one 25 years ago. But today the society is realizing that we cannot leave anybody behind, that we have to include everybody, and therefore, by law, we have to provide them better mobility means to improve their lives. We cannot ignore all these challenges and all these demands of the society of today. Well, we as a company defined a long time ago, many years ago, which are our principles, which are the principles that are defining us as a company, and a sort of purpose of what we want to be in the society of today. And one of came up, and I like most, is that our company wants to be a company that helps and facilitates the lives of our customers and of our users through innovative mobility solutions and systems. In short, that make people's lives easier. If you joined all these things, development necessities, our principles and social demands, you have really a perfect match. And that's why we have developed a wide range of products, services, solutions to be best in class, humanizing the cities, expanding urban accessibility. We provide accessibility in cities with complicated orography, reducing urban traffic, and preserving heritage. We provide new mobility in buildings that don't have an elevator. We are connecting people and places, facilitating accessibility to aging population. We are preserving historical places. We are modernizing and improving the mobility in old buildings. We are enabling pedestrian cities, repurposing congested city centers, and connecting people and nature. Let's see this in a very short video.
TKE Solutions for a More Accessible World. We are listening. I want to move freely without depending on other people. Building rehabilitation. Installation of a lift in a stairwell. I want to live my city without barriers. Urban accessibility, moving walkways in Santander. I want my personal circumstances not to be a limitation in my daily life. Rehabilitation of entrances, elevator descent to ground level. I want to be able to continue going out on the street without difficulty. Building rehabilitation, facade elevator integration. We want an increasingly accessible world designed for everyone. Urban accessibility, mechanical stairs up to El Miradero. And you. How do you want your home, your city, your life to be? Our commitment, making your life easier without leaving anyone behind. TKE. Driven by what drives you.
Summarizing, we are renewing buildings, cities, and lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Javier and Pedro. And now, for the closing remarks, we have Maria Pérez Gutiérrez, PhD architect and structural analysis professor of the University CEU San Pablo, who will talk about spreading high-rise culture in Spain. And very fast, then afterwards, we will have Íñigo Ortiz here again in the stage to present the Spanish high-rise buildings 2024 poster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to, well, thank you for inviting me to this event and thank you for organizing it. It's a pleasure. I'm just going to share with you our experience trying to spread the high-rise culture in Spain, well, especially in Madrid and especially among our students in the university. And well, we're going to share two short activities we have done this year. We participated with the Council of Tall Buildings in Madrid walking tour. We visited tall buildings so students can understand in place how they feel in a tall building. And also then we made them think a little bit beyond how all the restrictions you have and the conditions you have when you design a tall building. We were part of the global walking tour, so Madrid was part of it, and we organized it online with James Parak, who belongs to the Council of Tall Buildings. We decided to visit the 4 towers, just because of the title of the visit was Humanizing High Density, and we wanted to visit Espacio Caleido, just because, as Mark said, Espacio Caleido, there was a huge wound there. The Castellana and the giant towers there was a wound in the city, and Espacio Caleido came to humanize that place. So we wanted the students to just see how that place was transformed. It was before a windy platform, and now it's a great place to work, to live, to study, and finally for everyone, for the people in the city. Here we are in the visit. We not only visited the towers, but also kindly Pedro Ayuso, who was in OHL, explained us all the building process, because all of them are architecture students. And we also visited the offices so they could understand how it is to be in a high building. Not many of us have visited a 5th floor tower. And also the technology inside the building, so our students could understand how much space the mechanical systems take and the structural system takes. Only one thing here. I want to thank everyone that showed us the buildings, because they all were so proud of their buildings. So I think that's interesting to understand this feel of belonging that this type of huge buildings, when they are, of course, when you are happy there working, this sense of belonging, it was great, and they were proud to show how the building worked and all that stuff. Our students were really, really, really enthusiastic. And this is the second activity I'm going to share with you. We decided to organize this workshop, Humanizing High Density again, and we chose a plot in Madrid Nuevo Norte. Well, we chose the plot that is planned for a 330 meter high tall building. It was we decided to do it with mixed level students. So some of them were in charge of the design of the building, some others were in charge of the drawing analysis of the site, and also help drawing the final ideas. Other students were in charge of the sustainability effects of the building, and we took advantage of the technology. So every afternoon here, we connected with the Master of Tall Building and Vertical Urbanism students. Johan Kim was the one that gave us their contacts. So this was like the organization of the workshop. Every morning they have a motivational talk. Then they worked in a workshop, and also with this kind of pin-ups and intermediate deadlines, so they could have feedback in between. These were the lecturers. They were great. Some of them are our alumni, students that finished it with us. So we are very proud of Luis Lacón, Alejandra Fenwick, and Lara Muñoz. Iñigo was there explaining in a very interesting talk what to take in account today when designing a tall building. And then we also gave students tips of technical issues, because in tall buildings those are really, really important. So here you have some pictures of the workshop and some of the drawings our students did, and well, the environment in the workshop, and the connection with the IIT, which was very interesting, because the students of the IIT were like mentors of our students. So it's this kind of mixture of different level of students is interesting. They learn how to work in teams. Today, working alone, it's nonsense. So they not only learn a lot about tall buildings, but also how to work in different or transverse teams. And here I just going to share you some of the pictures in some videos, so they are yeah, as you can see, well, there was like a very interesting environment. It was only a 1-week workshop, so it was very intense. And here we have some of the students that were involved. And of course, the results were not a final tall building, but at least we started to spread this culture of tall buildings here in Spain. So we have this, I'm going to present all of them at the same time. You can see in the middle one, people drawing in the Kaleido space, and the final presentations. So it's a way of spreading in Spain. Well, I would like you to encourage you to, if you have any proposals of organizing things with the students, no matter which type of students, just contact us and we can help with that. I think that creating this type of events, that they are not only of one particular university or place or one particular type of students, but joining with international students and linking all these type of profiles is really interesting, and we all learn a lot. Well, for those two activities to be possible, I have to thank you so much, people. So, yeah, all of the people involved in the building, when they show us the buildings, and all the speakers that came to show their experience. So yes, basically this. And now, Inigo, maybe you can. I can go back and just explain the. Yeah, I'm going to go back. Thank you very much.
Bueno, hemos empezado en español con las palabras del decano. Voy a terminar en español para cerrar este acto, que me parece bastante correcto. Muchísimas gracias a todos los que habéis venido. Habéis hecho un gran esfuerzo por venir y dedicar este tiempo, a los sponsors que os habéis portado fenomenal. Creo que esto tiene que ser el punto de partida para que el Council en España coja mayor protagonismo. Nos tenéis aquí. Por favor, contad con nosotros para cualquier aclaración. Os invito insistentemente a que os apuntéis al evento de Estambul y sobre todo al evento de Londres, que va a ser espectacular. Y tenemos por delante un reto importantísimo que, como he dicho en mi exposición, lo que es la creatividad y la tecnología se tiene que mezclar para conseguir ese planteamiento holístico que el futuro nos está esperando. Y un momento que no sé dónde. Aquí. Bueno, os voy a mandar online. Hemos hecho un póster actualizado al 2024 sobre todos los edificios en altura que hay en España. No solamente los edificios, sino también las construcciones, puentes y antenas que hay en España. Creo que es bastante interesante y bastante significativo, y me gustaría que lo distribuyerais en vuestras redes sociales, porque bueno, la gente se fija, ve en su ciudad dónde está, los edificios más altos, y es un punto de referencia, y va a ser un punto de referencia para todos nosotros. Muchísimas gracias otra vez, y ahora nos tenéis a vuestra disposición tomando un café para charlar y mirar al futuro todos juntos. Muchísimas gracias.